I did everything right, and I'm being punished when I know that my brother, who's the asshole dropout deadbeat, is going to receive every single government benefit. If you have good credit, you want to buy a house, well, right now you're screwed. That brings us to an edition of Gerald Knows Things. Spared no expense.
Hate all of you.
That was great.
Thanks, Nick.
I did. That was awesome. He was scaring me.
Kick out of it.
Oh, my gosh.
He looked like one of the guys during Nixon that was being questioned. He looks like Ehrlichman, one of those guys on the series.
So there's a new, I don't know if you've been following, a new federal housing rule.
Yes.
And by the way, we talked about how the student loan forgiveness is one of the greatest wealth transfers to, funny enough, wealthy Americans, young, wealthy white bitches in American history. Right now, there's a new federal housing rule that will redistribute wealth, but what will it do? It'll punish you if you have lived your life in a disciplined way. If you're a home buyer with good credit, you're now going to have to pay higher mortgages to subsidize high-risk borrowers. It's almost like we've lived this before, but I don't know. Here's a clip.
I get the idea of the campaign promise to get the rich to pay their fair share. But aren't there going to be a lot of folks in the middle class who have just been responsible and have good credit who are going to also be caught up in this?
Yeah, it's like a penalty for good credit and putting a high down payment. I'm refinancing 2 of my properties, no offense, but if I do it before August, then I won't get hit with that $40. My problem with the $40 isn't the amount. It is whether this is the best way to redistribute wealth and close the housing gap in America.
So let me set this up, and then Gerald, of course, knows things. So the rule will require buyers with 630 or more credit scores to pay $40 more per month on a $400,000 loan in order to subsidize people who have a lower score.
Yeah, so basically you're going to have to pay higher fees.
Yeah, happiest, by the way, most happy about these new regulations is this guy. He is having a great time.
Whoa. Well, yeah. Well, look, and people, so one of the things when you buy a house, right, so your credit score matters, and they set the line at 630. 630, I'm just saying from a financial perspective, when they look at a 630, that's not exactly great. This is a tax on the middle class, guys. Like, you have no idea. This is not ultra wealthy people paying for people who are dirt poor and cannot afford anything. That's not what's going on.
What's even worse, buyers who put down 20% or more are the ones who are going to face the highest fees, to be clear. So, in other words, what used to be a requirement is now going to be a punishment. It's, wait, hold on a second. You saved the money? Wait a second. You don't have debt? Wait a second. You have a better credit score? Wait a second. You didn't buy a car that you couldn't afford? Now you have to pay for the other person who did. Yeah, Hootie, you're about to come in here.
We have an admonishment to deal out. It's actually 680.
Oh, okay.
Not
680.
Well, then
not
we're not
630.
being admonished.
Yes.
I always make that mistake with the 3 and the 8.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to pick up a girl.
Okay, so 680's base.
Oh, 18. No, it looked like a 3. It's an 8.
I thought it was an
Chris
8. Hansen.
Yes, it's a 3.
So 680 is definitely better, but it's still like when you're talking about credit scores, that's still going to be a lot of working class people who
it's punishing someone with a good credit score. What's the reason to get it? And I know people say you think people won't get a good credit score because they're going to have to pay $40. No, I think people won't get a good credit score if they have to pay $40. If they actually have to pay back their loans. If they're above the threshold for rent forgiveness. If they don't get some kind of COVID stipend. If they don't qualify for welfare benefits. At a certain point, you go, my life would be easier if I did absolutely nothing and collected these checks. It would certainly be more comfortable.
Yes.
I do think at a certain point you go, hold on a second. I didn't take out a student loan, which is being forgiven for that guy. I went to a trade. Now I'm being taxed more. I'm being punished if I want to buy a house. I did everything right, and I'm being punished when I know that my brother, who's the asshole dropout deadbeat, is going to receive every single government benefit. At a certain point, yes, not just this, but in totality, yes, people will stop trying.
Right, and by the way, it was $40 per month.
Right, yes.
For 30 years. That you will be paying this if you take the average time. Unless you refinance, and then, of course, it could just be the rest of your life that you're paying all of this money. And by the way, that $400,000, you're like, oh, well, that's a lot of home. Not in California, not in New York, not in Connecticut, not in these other places. It's not a lot of home. And so if you pay for a home that's $500,000, $600,000, $800,000, it's more money.
Nick had a point about this and run through it.
Yeah. What's next if you have a perfect driving record? Mm-hmm. You know, they're going to slap a 7% tax on us. So, the people that are carjacking us
yes,
can get their own car without having to shoot us in the head.
They're going to jack you with an Amex Platinum. Get out the car, bitch.
Yeah.
How'd you qualify? It's a new loan forgiveness.
They could do this all day to us.
I know.
Nickel and dime us all fucking day. So much for white privilege. That's all I'm going to say.
You're an Italian-Irish man from Boston.
Actually, even a tiny bit more Irish.
Really?
I found that out recently when...
You have, and look, I know Nick gets uncomfortable with compliments, but you have always been known, because a lot of comedians blow their money, with having been responsible with money. Were you raised that way? Was that something that was instilled in you when you were young?
Yes. I had an accountant when I was in 8th grade.
Did you?
I did.
A lot of vowels in his last name?
I grew up with Henry Block's kid, Jake Block. No, yeah, my dad, we had 5 kids. He never made more than $38,000 a year, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yes, we learned responsibility.
You learned how to try and save, how to be responsible.
Yes.
And now there's no reason to do that in a lot of ways. What are you going to... So think about it. You live off the government. You live off the government for a while. You get rent forgiveness. This is when people say, well, what about people who can't pay their rent? Let me ask you this. Was there forgiveness for the people who are providing homes? And I'm not just talking about people who run giant condos and Vanguard and BlackRock. What about the people who own 5 or 6 properties, right? And they rent it out. Was there forgiveness for them on their mortgage? Was there forgiveness for them on their payments? No, there was forgiveness for the people who had no interest in paying their rent. What happens here? What happens here if people can't make the payments in the house? It's not just about the $40. Right. It's about encouraging and leveraging and pressuring banks and society at large to provide loans to people who will not be able to pay them back.
That's never hurt us in the past.
That's never hurt us in the past. Something about Barney Frank's basement.
So 20% on a house, this is $80,000 is what people will have to save. And with this economy, with Joe Biden's economy, with inflation, all the extra stuff they're having to pay every single month for the normal household goods to live, foods and services, that adds up. And by the way, it's $14,400 over the life of that loan, but that's not the real cost. That's just the dollars you spent. If you'd taken that $40 and paid it towards principal every single month because of how they calculate interest and do it for so long, I guarantee you it would probably be closer to $28,000.
That's an estimate because we don't have an
That's an estimate because I'm doing the math on the top of my head, but just paying down your mortgage. But look, I understand that this all sounds really, really bad. And if it sounds stupid to you, you just have to remember that credit scores are actually racist.
But leaving rent payments out of the formula isn't just stupid, it's racist. Because while rent payments don't count toward your credit score, mortgage payments do. And guess who's more likely to have mortgages? White people.
Oh, no.
To be polite, I'll just call them Macklemore fans.
Oh, you funny bitch.
So white people...
You never ran into her at the cellar, did you?
No, I don't even know who she is.
Shut up.
Nice hairdo.
Well, so
nice jet. What the? Does any?
I know sometimes it's like an overload. There's so much wrong with it, you can't even pick.
Oh, the race, the gender. I mean, the humor. It's just,
you know who's more likely to have mortgages? White people. Well, I was thinking that makes you racist.
Yeah, thank you. Right? Thank you very much.
No, it's a statistic. But you said statistics are racist. I don't understand the rules.
Well,
sorry, Gerald knows things.
This is even being selective, right? So you're telling me that white people with great credit scores are going to have to pay for minorities who have bad credit scores, and it's like, but actually, we don't actually have the highest credit scores.
No, we do not.
Here come the Asians to our rescue yet again.
Yes.
Right? They actually have a 745, whereas whites have 734, but then you have Hispanics at 701, higher than I thought, than I anticipated.
But you also eliminate all the ones who don't have credit cards because they're here illegally.
I didn't mean in a bad way. I just, Tim laughed about it earlier when I said it.
Well, they're not known for time. Hispanics are hardworking, but they're not always known for timeliness.
Correct.
So I thought there'd be a few more late payments.
It's the first of the month,
Of course, the Chinese have better credit scores because their parents and grandparents from the old country, the whole credit score thing was going on before they got here.
Absolutely.
In a certain way.
And if you don't, if they shake your piggy bank and it sounds empty, they jam piano keys into your neck.
So, by the way, and the average black credit score gets 677. That number's important because all they have to do is accidentally pay their credit card on time for about, 4 months, and they're all of a sudden in that category of 680 or higher.
But why would they do that now? Because they'd be punished. The key is to keep it just below 680.
Yes.
So good enough that you can get some favorable rates, probably not the best, but you can still do the Carvana thing, but not so high that Uncle Sam is any the wiser. The best credit score is like that 670 range if you can do it.
Right. So look, there's a handful of other claims here that I want to get to.
All right, let's go through. Claim.
He's not doing. Okay, finally. Thank you very much. So subsidizing these loans will make it easier for minorities to buy homes, right? We just talked about that a little bit. But according to the Federal Housing Finance Agency Director, Sandra Thompson, the rule will increase pricing support for purchasers borrowing limited purchase borrowers limited by income or by wealth. Right in September 2022, Bank of America launched a similar initiative. They should just title it "Give money away to people who will never give it back."
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
This is that predatory lending. Remember that when people say predatory lending as a kid? I was going, wait, hold on a second.
Can't do this.
Predatory lending. Well, hold on. Okay. So banks lend money. Yes. Okay. How do they make they make their money when people pay it back and they pay interest. Okay. So explain to me predatory lending. Predatory lending is where these predators, they lend to people who could never pay it back. I go, okay, I think I'm missing something. Because they make their money, the bank, right? Yes.
Yeah.
When people pay it back, and there's interest. So they're predators. Who is it that they're specifically seeking out people who can't pay it back? Okay, hold on. Let's explain this to me one more time. So the predatory lenders are giving away money basically for free. Oh, no, sorry, I forgot. The government insures it. Oh!
No. But I think I can. It's predatory when a bank does it. It's helpful when the government does it.
Yes, and when the government shakes down the bank and forces them to do it.
Well, that's assumed in the process, allegedly. Right? So look, their program, Bank of America, I gotta think like the executives at Bank of America were like, we got in trouble for doing this on our own, and now they're telling us to do it again.
Right.
Like, this is fantastic. The program gave first-time minority home buyers 0 down payments and 0 closing cost mortgages. Do you know why it's, hold on, just as an aside, do you know why it's important to have a down payment? So that you have skin in the game.
Yes,
so
preferably with a higher melanin concentration.
Yes. I love it. When times get tough, you can't just walk away from it. That's why you do it. And so you don't penalize people for doing that. And that's why people look for 20%.
Yes.
I'm just going right over that because I missed it. I'm really sorry.
Who was that? I'm trying to think. That wasn't Jerry Lewis. Was that? I love it. Was it?
I don't know who I was doing.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Jackie Gleason?
Maybe it might have been.
Something from there.
I don't know.
Do you know this goes back to Clinton, the CRA, Community Reinvestment Act?
Yes.
Murdered a guy.
See that? I thought I'd throw that in. Sound intelligent. All right.
Well, look, here's the truth. The idea that crashed the markets in 2008 was exactly this. Loans were given to buyers incapable of paying them back. We talked about that. Here's a quote from Investopedia. The subprime meltdown was the sharp increase in high-risk mortgages that went into default beginning in 2007, contributing to the most severe worldwide, I'll add that to the quote, recession in decades. It wasn't in there. That was absolutely true. And look, for all its faults, The Big Short did illustrate this pretty well.
No one on the poll has good credit, and they're all cash rich.
That's fair.
I think I read Warren Buffett say something like that. No. Not right.
Who's Warren Buffett?
It was a great film, except they didn't really include the government complicity as much as they should have. Absolutely. None of this makes sense. Look, none of this works if the government doesn't guarantee the loans. If the government doesn't guarantee that they'll pay it to the banks. If the banks had to sink, no company is too big to fail. Just to be clear, you cannot have too big to fail. Think of every industry that you hate. Okay, think of banking. You a big fan of banking? Think of airlines. Think of the automobile industry. Think of health insurance companies. These are companies, by the way, where at some point or another, a company or several companies have been deemed too big to fail. Have airlines gotten better, or have they gotten more expensive and shittier, and CEOs walk off with bigger bonuses?
Right.
You're mad at that? Why wouldn't they? When the fact is they can never go bankrupt. Banks, they lend to people who can't pay it back. They can never go bankrupt. They're too big to fail. BlackRock, Vanguard, Miss Socialist herself, Elizabeth Warren, said they need to be deemed too big to fail so that way we can have our claws in and we can regulate them and hopefully, at that point, of course, rebuild the world and our image with these ESG scores. Too big to fail only screws you and the country if the government is what deems too big to fail. None of this makes sense. If you just say, well, hold on a second, we're not going to lend you money. Why? Because you're not going to pay it back, and we're in the business of being paid back, and you're not going to pay it, we're not going to make any money. But then when the government says, you better give them that loan, or we're going to punish you, and by the way, if they can't pay it back, we'll give you money. There is no free market. It's not free enterprise at this point.
That was explained. This is the first time I ever understood the whole thing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's fantastic.
I'm angry.
Yeah.
Seriously, that was pretty
well,
good.
look, and I
paid attention.
They revealed their motives in the very beginning. This is a really bad idea, and you're like, oh, why in the world would they do this? He revealed his motives. The guy that they were interviewing at first, Mr. Talking Hair, basically said, he was a candidate for mayor in D.C., which means you're, far, 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 far left,
yes,
right, if you're going to run for mayor. He said, this is a bad way to redistribute income, make the rich pay their fair share, and close the housing gap. Those were the three things. We have to redistribute income by penalizing people who are successful. We think white people have better credit scores and therefore they're going to be successful and rich, and so we're going to penalize them. White people now are paying minorities, essentially, right? So that's part one. Close the housing gap. Well, everybody deserves housing in this country. Not everybody deserves equal access to amazing homes if you can't afford it.
Yeah.
Thought we'd tried that before. It didn't work out for
Not everyone
people.
deserves Ben Carson's bathroom with chandeliers on the wall.
That's why we have Airbnb now.
Yes.
Destroy somebody else's house.
That's why we have public toilets in San Francisco, for crying out loud, that cost $1 million. Right. It's the Taj Mahal of toilets, really.
Yeah, well, George Michael was ahead of his time. He knew where to pick up the people.
He was. It reveals what they're trying to do. And if you guys think that bankers are bad, the federal government trying to appease a voting bloc will always do things that are far worse than bankers can even contemplate doing.
Who would think that the same people who demand that the Japanese embassy fly the rainbow flag might not have your best interests at heart as it comes to home loans? I mean, I hate to connect it all together, but stop being a crazy conspiracy theorist. This has been Gerald Knows Things, though we kind of stepped on him. I'm sorry.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.